there's this one book genre that I really love, but I kind of feel like it's been neglected by the reading world for a long time now. But recently a couple of these types of books have been blowing up a little bit more, and I'm so excited because I feel like the internet is finally starting to give this genre a chance. The genre is Christian fantasy, and this week I'm going to be reading 3 of these books to show you exactly how cool this genre is. And my biggest hope is that by the end I can come out of this with a 5-star book. It's been so long since I've found one, and so I'm hoping that this video is where it finally happens. Fingers crossed. So as I searched for all the books to read for this video, I very quickly decided on 3 fantasies that all include extra things that I know I'll love and really have the potential to make the books better than most are for me. So the first book is a YA Christian fantasy, which is just very specifically the type of Christian fantasy that I tend to enjoy. The second book is actually going to be the second book in a series. The first book in the series I really enjoyed, and so because I already know that I love the author, the characters, and the world and everything, I feel like it's almost a guarantee that I'm really gonna love it. And the last book not only has one of the prettiest covers I've seen in a while, but it also seems so similar to another book that I loved so much. That book is called Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. It's a much lighter, like fairy tale-esque fantasy that I just really liked the vibe of. So this third book I think is going to be a lot like that, and I'm so excited to start it. By the way, most of the books I'm reading for this video just happen to have like the best covers that I really love. Isn't this cover just so nice? It's like perfect for a fantasy book. Anyway, I'm going to attempt to explain the plot of this book to you, but I think it's just kind of confusing to explain, so just bear with me. So it's a young adult book that takes place in this fantasy world where everyone has different types of powers, and in the beginning of the book they give you this glossary of terms that explains all the different powers and what they do, which I have not memorized. But the main character is a girl who has the gift of being able to take someone else's memories from them, which sounds interesting, but it's actually proving to be very useful to a lot of the people who have this power in this world. At the same time, the main character's mom is very sick, and the main character is trying to do everything she can to protect her, which at the moment seems like the only option is to escape this world that is run by a leadership who has a bunch of powers, who are using those powers for not good things. There's already been some like fight scenes, everyone's using their powers. It's a very fun fantasy book, but I will say it is been a little bit hard to keep up with what's what power means what, but other than that, the story's good. The writing's very fast-paced. That's one thing I love about YA books, is that it's just so easy. You can just fly through it. So far, it's been a very enjoyable time. Something I really like to see in fantasy books is when it's not all just about the fight scenes, the magic and stuff. I like when there's also an equal balance of like the relationship the main character has with their friends or their family, just more like normal things about their daily life to make it feel more real, to make the main character feel more human. And that is something that this book is doing very nicely. It's so far a lot about her and her relationship to her younger sibling, but then also there's a lot of fantasy elements as well. But I like when there's a balance of the two, and this one's doing really well with that. I will say that so far there doesn't seem to be any mention of God or Jesus or what they interpret that to be in this world. And I do know that sometimes when a book is marketed as a Christian book, sometimes that does just mean that it's clean fiction, like it's good for a Christian audience, which I do think I prefer to hear about God in a book that's considered a Christian fiction book, which I understand is kind of hard to do in a way that works well, which might come up in this book. I'm not even halfway through yet, so I don't know. But I do know that the next 2 books I will be reading next definitely do talk a lot about God and Jesus in their stories, which will be interesting because sometimes that can be done so well, and when it is, I love it, but sometimes it can be done not so well. So we'll see how those work out, but for now, I'm just focused on this book. Also, by the way, the third book that I'm going to be reading in this video has just come in the mail. It has one of the prettiest book covers I think I've ever seen, and because of that, I cannot wait to start that one. That one is one that has so much potential for being a 5-star. I'm just so excited for that one. Also, by the way, I have decided that if I do find a 5-star book, at the end of this video, I will reward myself with a crumble cookie, as I do. If you've seen a lot of my videos, you will know that I've done that several times before. It's mostly just an excuse to get a cookie because I love those cookies. So we can look forward to that if I do find a 5-star. Also, if I do find a 5-star, I'm going to give that book a very important place on my main shelf, which is saying a lot because my main shelf is very full. So it's going to require a bit of reorganizing to make a spot for it. But if I find a 5-star, it'll be worth it. And who knows, maybe The Memory Thief will be that book. Sometimes when I'm just really excited about starting a book, I can't help but start it, even if I'm not entirely finished with the last book yet. And that's what I've done with this one. I got it on my Kindle. And a big reason why I've been so excited for this book is because I finished the first book in this series kind of a while ago and I really, really liked it. And I love this author and I love this author's writing. And so I've been wanting to start the second one ever since, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. And when I knew I was going to read it for this video, couldn't help myself and I went ahead and started it. The book is called The Flight of the Raven, by the way. I don't know why I didn't say that. And it's the second book in the Mark of the Raven trilogy. And it's just been so fun going straight back into this world with this main character who I really, really love and this writing style that I really love. It's just been so fun so far. I'm like 20% of the way through, so I have been reading a bit. But just to explain a little bit of what this entire story is about, it takes place in a magical kingdom where there's a bunch of different houses and each house has a different unique power in like that family. And the house that the main character is born into has the ability to dream walk, which means she can like travel into other people's dreams, which might seem like kind of a useless power, but her house has been using this power to do evil for a long time, to like find out people's weaknesses and manipulate them and stuff like that. And once this main character gets old enough to be able to use her power, she finds out for the first time that her mother and her whole family have been using this power for evil. And I think this is going to be one of those books that I can't talk too much about because a lot of what this one is about is going to have to do with probably spoilers from the first book, which I don't want to say. But like a huge theme to this story is the main character having to choose between good and evil, even when it seems like everyone around her and everyone she knows and loves are all making the wrong decisions. It's up to her to kind of like make the right one. And that was a huge part of the first book, and I've been seeing that so far in this book as well. This book also has a more clear depiction of who God is, unlike the last book. They don't call him God because this is a new imaginary world, but there is this presence of light that they can talk to, that they get their power from, and I really like that aspect of the book as well. I'm so excited to read a bunch today. So like I said, I did go ahead and start The Flight of the Raven, and I have been reading it for several days now, and I may or may not be already almost halfway through the book. And I haven't said anything about it yet, so I need to talk to you about it, but I'm also a little bit afraid of spoiling things from the first book if I do talk about this book at all, so I need to be careful with what I say. This book so far has been a little bit more about the characters and like their character development, I feel like, rather than a lot of action, which I feel like the first book was more about. This one is a little bit more about the romance between the main two characters, and this one is just a little bit more about the world and the main character's powers. I just feel like I'm learning a lot more throughout the book so far, and not too much has like happened in the story. So yeah, like I said, I'm halfway through and I'm hoping to get through a majority of the rest of this today. Probably not gonna finish it, but like I said, a lot of this book so far is just getting to know the characters more and the world more. And I understand that this is a very complex world, and so that's pretty necessary. But part of me is a little bit like, can something happen? I feel like I just keep waiting for something more major to happen, and nothing really is. I feel like the first book was packed with a lot of action, but not just like little subplots, like main big changes happening a lot, and I'm just not seeing that as much in this book. And again, I see how it can be necessary, but I just kind of want something to happen, you know? So I have finished The Memory Thief. This one surprisingly took me a little bit longer than I expected, considering it's not that long of a book and the font is pretty big, but I have finished it, and there was a lot that I really enjoyed about this book. It was very suspenseful. There was a lot of action, a lot going on the entire time, which I did enjoy. However, I will say that I feel like I found myself asking a lot of questions throughout this book that I feel like didn't quite get answered. And I'm kind of scared to say that because I know that there's a good good chance that this was like user error and that other people probably wouldn't have that same experience as me. But just in my experience, and again, because I was reading it kind of slowly, I got to some places where I was like, wait, why doesn't the main character just do this? Wouldn't this resolve the problem much quicker? So the things that I didn't like as much about it could have been my fault. It was still good at the same time. So, oh, and also this one didn't have that many strong Christian themes in it, which isn't a bad thing. But anyway, the book was still enjoyable to me. There wasn't anything like terrible about it, but I wouldn't say that there was anything that I was like obsessed with about it. So we're not starting off too strong. I'm not actually sure what star rating I want to give this. Usually I can't decide on a star rating for a book until a little while afterwards. So I'm gonna have to think about it, but I do know that this is not going to be a 5-star book. So that puts a little bit more pressure on my next 2 books, but I do think that there's a lot of potential for 5-star qualities in my next 2. I have finished The Flight of the Raven, and honestly my opinions about it kind of stayed the same throughout the entire thing. I still love this story, I still love these characters, and honestly with the way that this one ended, I really do want to finish this entire series and read the 3rd book, but I do think that I enjoyed the 1st book in the series more than I like the 2nd one. I do understand that with longer series, the middle book tends to serve the purpose of developing the characters better and relaying more information to set up for the finale in the 3rd book. And I do get that. That tends to be how a lot of trilogies are. But I'm still happy I read it. Like, it's still a very good book, but I'm just like comparing it to the 1st one, it's not quite as good. So sadly, this book is not going to be a 5-star, which means that a lot of pressure is being put on the next book I read, which is the last book in my list. I really hope that one ends up being a 5-star. We'll see. So it's finally time to start my 3rd book. Now this book came in the mail a few days ago and it's just been sitting on my desk and I've been staring at it every day and I've been wanting to start it so bad. It seems so interesting and I love the cover and I'm just really excited to get into it. It is called Ink and Ivy by Ashley Willingham. Like I said before, this book seems to be very similar to Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, which is an entire book series that I really loved. And so because of that, I just felt like this book had so much potential. So I think this book is going to be pretty different to the last 2 that I had read. I think this is going to be way less intense, way less fighting scenes, probably way less political than the last 2 books. And I think this one's just more like fairy tale-esque, a fun, whimsical time in a fantasy world. And I'm kind of excited to go into a book like this after just reading 2 books that are pretty opposite to that. But basically, from what I can tell, it's about a girl who's living in a fantasy world. And honestly, the plot seems pretty simple. It's just about a girl who's wanting to buy a shop in her little village so she can turn it into a store and live there. Someone else ends up buying the shop before she can get around to doing it, who I think is going to be the love interest. It also talks very explicitly about God on the back, so I think that's going to play a huge role in this. And I'm really excited to see how this author balances like Christianity and talking about God and maybe the Bible with also this fantasy book. So I'm very excited and I'm going to actually start it right now and I'll let you know how it goes. In some ways, it kind of almost reminds me of Narnia a little bit. Just a little bit, just because they're like talking animals and stuff, which I didn't expect. I didn't think that's what was gonna be in this. It's just very much like she's living in this cute little town. Everyone has like magic or different powers. Everyone has like a little shop. Someone has a bakery. Someone has the little inn that you go stay in. And the main character is saving up to buy a shop to turn it into an apothecary. But what has just happened in the story is someone else has bought that shop before her. She's not too happy about it. I'm only like 40 pages in and there's already been a passage from Jeremiah like quoted. And I will say that it doesn't feel too odd or out of place, even though this is a fantasy book. And I always think it's very impressive when people talk about God a lot in a book, but it doesn't feel like weird or unnatural. So I am into it so far, but I'm only 30 pages, so who's to say? I was kind of thinking earlier, like, what if none of these end up being 5-star books? Like, I was really banking on one of these 3 being a 5-star. What if none of them are? I don't really know what I'm gonna do about that because that was kind of my whole goal, and I don't really have time to read more books before this video needs to be posted. So I also really don't want to say something is a 5-star if it's not. So we'll just have to wait and see about that. I'm getting close to about halfway through this book now, and there's a lot that I am loving about this book so far. It definitely is very much along the lines of Once Upon a Broken Heart, so I was definitely right about that. If you happen to love that book, you're gonna love this book, especially because it's basically that book but with so many more Christian themes. Like, there's just so much in this that I really enjoy. She actually has found out that she has a secret admirer, and her friends are really trying hard to figure out who that is among all of the townspeople. And I'm really liking this author's writing, and I know that she has another book, The War of Crowns, I think, that I also heard was very good, so I might be trying that one next. But I've been thinking a lot about its 5-star potential, and I am getting a little bit worried because I'm not quite sure if it is 5-star worthy or not. Maybe I'm putting too much thought into it, and obviously I'm only halfway through. I can't decide right now whether I find a 5-star at the end of this video or not. I do think I've still kind of proven that Christian fantasy is such a cool genre, but I also really want my cookie, which I said I would only get for myself if I did find a 5-star book. So fingers crossed this continues to go well and perhaps even gets a little bit better. As I continued to read through Ink and Ivy, I started to get pretty worried because although there was a lot I loved about this book, I started to kind of compare it to some of the other 5 stars I have in my head, and I honestly just didn't think it quite matched them. So then I was pretty worried, and I started frantically looking for other Christian fantasies online to possibly go buy and read really quick in hopes that one of those would be a 5-star and then I could finish this video with a 5-star book. But just like with all these others, I knew that there was no guarantee. Not to mention I needed to go ahead and finish this video so it could be posted. So I have decided that pretty soon I'm going to be making kind of like a second part to this video where I either try more Christian fantasy or other types of Christian fiction, and I can guarantee that I will read until I find a 5-star book. So please leave some suggestions on which ones you think I should try for this. For now, I think this video is going to come to an end, but it's not a sad ending because I truly did love every single book that I read in this video. I would highly recommend all of these books, and even though they weren't 5 stars, I feel like all of these books just solidify how cool Christian fantasy can be. And because I really did love all of these, I'm actually going to take the 2 physical books that I have and find a place for them on my main shelf anyway, because they definitely deserve it. And of course, I'm going to get myself a cookie anyway, and it's gonna be delicious.